Hey everybody, welcome back to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. Today, I'm excited to bring you an exclusive interview with Nick Romano, who just recently started a YouTube channel in this genre. I wanted to bring him on for his first interview because he has some very interesting stories growing up on Staten Island, and he is around the new Springville boys and neighborhood wise guys in the 80s and 90s. Nick comes from a somewhat connected family and had his own dealings and experiences as a youth. Just so you know, I checked Nick and his story out as I wanted to make sure he wasn't an informant and they wasn't lying about his relationships. He shared with me a lot of photos and other evidence the past week or so. I believe in giving people a chance, and so I'm willing to bring him on so he can share some of his experiences. Please like and subscribe to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor if you haven't already. Without further delay, on to our feature presentation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. And I'm really happy today to bring on another guest. We've got Nicholas Romano. How are you doing, Nick?
Hey, James, how are you? I first want to just start off by saying I'm really humble and very grateful that you're giving me the opportunity to come on your channel. I kind of just getting into this crazy space that we're in only in the last maybe 5 weeks. So I really appreciate you bringing me on, and I'm glad we got to talking in the last couple of days. You seem like a very unique, genuine guy, James, and I look forward to doing some stuff with you in the future. Thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, of course, and thank you. And I think I'm your first interview that you've been on, right?
First brand new interview. You are my opening show, James.
Very good. So let me tell people a little bit about you. So, you're originally from Staten Island, New York, and so you started your YouTube channel, what, about 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, about 5 6 weeks ago.
Yep. And I've been able to watch your content. It's exciting when we get new people into this space, especially with you. What I find unique with your channel is that you have a lot of stories from your childhood. You grew up in the 80s and 90s there on Staten Island, and so anybody in this genre knows, there was a big mob presence with several of the families during then. And so you've got your own share of stories. And so, I like the content that you've been putting out so far.
James, I listen, like I said, man, I'm definitely humbled that you've even been paying attention to some of my stuff. And I hope that some of your viewers will enjoy what I got to do over there. And we're gonna do a mix of some different things. I definitely want to bring on some entertainment in there and do a little bit of maybe some skits and kind of put my personality into my channel. But I do have a ton of stories and my family going all the way back to South Brooklyn and President Street and Carroll Street. My uncles and mother and father, very well known in the area. And I've been reading some of Frank DiMatteo's books that I've been in touch with him as well. And we got to talking about my uncle and some of the old days. And as I made you aware in some of the stuff that we talked about, my uncle Joe went back to Louis Hubella, the Syrian, which was with the Gallows, and he married the Syrian's daughter, which was my Aunt Lois. And obviously, their side of the family was through marriage, but that was a big connection going back to that time. And my father worked on the docks as a
Hmm.
longshoreman for
Yeah.
many, many years. So yeah, we have a lot of history going back to Brooklyn, and then we moved to Staten Island when my mom was actually pregnant with me. So I did grow up on Staten Island, but lots of connections from both areas, James. Lots of family, cousins, friends that stayed in Brooklyn. Other people moved to Staten Island. So just a lot of people in general that were family and friends growing up in that time.
Yeah, no, very good. And also, I encourage everyone to check out Nick's YouTube channel. So it's the Nick Romano Show, and so like I said, you've been out there for about 5 or 6 weeks. You've got some great content. So, I encourage everyone to check it out, and I will be providing all the links that you have in the description, and so people will be able to find you real easily.
Great, James. Thank you so much again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And so, one of the things I wanted to mention off the bat, before or as we're getting started in this interview is so,
Sure.
anytime we get someone new into this space, this is kind of a tough genre at times. And so you always have people that you have doubters. You got people that don't, they want to assume the worst. I think people are skeptical, and I understand because we do have a lot of frauds in this genre, and we have a lot of people that aren't who they say they are their informants. And so the thing I wanted to make sure people understood is, can you answer this? Are you an informant? Have you ever cooperated with the law enforcement?
No, absolutely not, James. Definitely. I don't even think I've told on anybody in grammar school or kindergarten, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
So we don't. As far as crossing that bridge, this is going to be very easy. A lot of my crime was done as a young kid, and a lot of the stuff I was doing was very early on. Later on in my life, I ended up moving down to Florida. That was in like 2001. And I had some trouble here and there, but nothing that would have ever, knock on wood, put me in a situation where I would have had to testify against anybody or anything like that. So, to again answer your question kind of shortly, I've never informed on anybody. People can go look up paperwork. The most I've ever really been in trouble was mostly dealing with probation as a youth, and then
yeah,
I got locked up a couple times. The most I've probably spent in jail, thank God, was no more than 90 days, 60 something days. I'm sorry, in
yeah,
a state jail. So none of that stuff as far as being an informant, and anything that I ever knew. A lot of these people are dead, or any stories that I might talk about. This is going back some stuff to 30 years. So,
yeah.
again, to answer your question, no, no, never an informant at all.
Yep, and I know one of the things because you do have, your family's got, a few connections, just let people know, you got into some trouble where you had some stories from your youth, but just for the record, you weren't ever in that life, on record with any of the families, right?
No, no, definitely not, James. And one thing you'll find out on my channel, and hopefully some of your viewers, if they do come and check me out, is that I'm definitely not going to be one of these guys that come on here and portray any false stuff, or different. I was a street kid. Again, in my youth, I
Yeah,
ran around. I was doing things that a lot of other kids were doing in the neighborhood. You look up to some of these guys. We had a lot of youth gangs growing up. We covered some of that stuff that I was talking about with the Springville Boys
yeah,
and the Wanderers and the South Beach Sickies, and there was a bunch of different the gangs and things like that on the island. But my family, my dad had his own social club. He had some sports book uh, and gambling going on for many years. So
yeah,
he had his connections. And again, he was not a made guy. I want to touch on some of this, and a lot of it I will in my own channel. There was a
right,
lot of guys that were involved in Staten Island that really didn't need to be made or need a button. Navigating the 80s and 90s back then, you had tons of different street guys in the street. You had made guys all over the place. It was, a very crazy time in Staten Island. And, some people don't realize that when you have all these different mobsters, I mean, for people that don't know, Staten Island is about 11 miles long.
yep,
So It's very small, and people coming from Brooklyn, and everybody kind of knew each other, and there were social clubs, and people had connections all over the place. My godparents, if anybody wants to check out a video I did on the local 400, they were heavily in control of a union that
Mhm.
went back to the 60s. And my godparents were in control of that union all the way up until 2000, when indictments started to come down with the Persicos and Chris Paciello out in Florida once he got picked up. And I actually moved down there right when that was happening. So it was a very big story in Miami, in South Beach. And that's another whole part of my story that I am going to get to a little later. Just moving down there, and there was a lot of different things that were going on and that I was hearing from back home in Staten Island. And a bunch of the Springville guys that I worked with, excuse me, they ended up getting picked up probably 10, 11 months later on after I was in Florida. And then that whole story happened with all of them guys. And I literally was working for them guys before I left Staten Island. I was working over at a pizzeria that they owned, and I found out everything pretty much in Florida, just coming from other people, and obviously it was all in the papers. And a couple of them guys that I was familiar with in my neighborhood, and that I knew, they got picked up in Boca at the time. So
Yeah.
it was a very no, it was a very well known story.
Right. And so just touching on that real fast, and then we'll go back to your early days. But you go down to Boca, and or, I mean in South Florida, and then and so you had been friends with some of the people with the new Springville boys,
Yes.
and so what happened was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Chris Paciello ended up getting picked up, and so he was already down in South Florida. He was a big name, celebrity type guy by then, and then he gets picked up on the cold cases, and he ends up ratting out a lot of those new Springville boys, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. He began to talk about a lot of crimes that were done over the past 10 years, with all them guys doing a lot of different things up and down the East Coast, with some bank robberies and things like that. They did a lot of stuff that he maybe not was so directly involved with, but he knew about a lot of things. And once he started to flip on all of those other major guys too, I guess obviously it was easy to throw all these other guys under the bus. I mean, from what I remember, there was the 40, 50 big names that really began to fall with the Persicos, and with the Wild Bill Cutolo murder, and even the local 400, like I said, which was ran by my godfather. He was the president of that union. That ended up reaching all the way to there, with some stock things and other things that they had going on. And my godfather actually did a couple years because of that case,
Mm.
and he stepped down for Persico to step into the union at that time. So
Right.
it was Chris started a domino effect that yes, went very, very far into a lot of different people. Like I said, some made guys, and the Springville guys, some of them were away already. They got time added on. Other guys just got picked up and got hit with fresh new charges.
Right. And what was so before all this happened, and then back when you were on Staten Island, and you knew Chris Paciello, knew of his reputation. What was he like back then on the streets? What was people's thoughts about Chris, um, and I know he was kind of a free agent too. I knew he was with the New Springville Boys, but he did stuff with the Bath Avenue crew, he did stuff with different groups, and so what was his reputation like?
Yeah, he was a very well known guy in the area. He obviously did some stuff with the Springville boys, from what I heard as a kid and a lot of different stories, he was a very big car thief in the beginning. I've heard stories about him robbing different, different maybe push-in robberies. Another story was he used to rob. There was a bridge that he got away with robbing a couple times, something in the Verrazano Bridge. Whether that was true or not, I'm not sure. But Chris was involved in a lot of different things, obviously, and he was well known. When he got down to Florida, I mean, he was still a lot of people talking about him in Staten Island and how he just got down there, and he went into business with Risk, I believe, was his first club, and then
Yep.
they kind of got out of there, and obviously, I heard there was a little fire that broke out,
Hmm.
and that got him into his next place with Madonna and some of them. But he was well known on the street. But just like all these other guys, like the Springville Boys and Lee and Big Billy and all of those guys, they did stuff with him, obviously, and then he was obviously also involved with the Bath Avenue crew with the Judy Shemtoff, murder that came back to kind of open up the can of worms, really. And then, like I said, just dominoes began to fall. And going back to what you said, he was very known as a car thief, as a score guy, and just a street kid, like you said, a free agent, kind of out there, but doing his own thing.
Yeah, and he was, and and that's the other thing. I hear people sometimes, obviously, he's a rat. We know about that, but he wasn't a pushover either. My understanding, he was good with his hands. He could take care of himself, and he kind of lives. He's not in any sort of anonymity at this point, and so I just think the guy doesn't have any fear of someone doing anything to him, right?
No, I'll say this about him, James, and to be honest, it's actually with a lot of guys that
Yeah.
were from Staten Island and some of those really tough street kids, and like you said, good with their hands. I don't think Chris is hiding from anybody at all today. He does his own thing, and I'm sure people are very aware of what he does. And as far as him being scared, no, he's pretty much been out in the open for a long time. I read the story back a long time ago with Joey Merlino, and I confronted him maybe at a basketball game. Chris had a couple different well-known fights too that were in some of articles and stuff on. Also, the book. There was some book, and there was like an FX series a long time ago. But there was stuff. He was a very tough kid with his hands, and I don't think Chris was really, like I said, worried about anybody. Like any of those other guys too. Same thing with all those guys in Staten Island were really not afraid of too many people, to be honest, James. Whether you had a button or not, and if they needed to sometimes go see somebody if they really had to, they had access to that as well. So it wasn't like they were no pushover guys. And Chris, yeah, definitely fell into that category as well.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to your childhood, and so we touched on your father a little bit, but what was it like growing up? What was your childhood like? And I know that you had an incident that happened when you were 13. I
Yeah.
know that that's something that's going to be revealed in more detail later, but could you touch a little bit on your childhood, maybe some of your experiences that you started to get in trouble a little bit when you were 13?
Yeah, absolutely, James. And the first thing I'll say is my parents really did everything they could for me. I was the youngest of three, so they tried to do everything to have me be good and try to teach me the right way. And just when you grow up kind of like that way. I remember finding out little things as I got older that my dad had a club and the sports betting and the gambling. I used to go in the club with some of my friends. I would stop there. The guys would all throw me some money, and I started to see things early on. And even with all the kids and the older guys in the neighborhood, you see that stuff. You hear a lot of people talk about it on their channels, and all these people in your life, whether it's your family or people that you grew up with in the neighborhood, that's what you kind of gravitate to when
Right.
when you grow up around that. And I started to get in trouble, little stuff, and some things might be innocent, where I was already fooling around with some football tickets and placing bets, and we would hang out in the street. We were crazy kids running around doing things in the woods, and it just at first you did all stuff like that, and you got into trouble and mischief. You got to remember, back then there was none of all this technology. There was nothing. Kids went out and played all day long until
Right.
6, 7 o'clock. You maybe went home, got some good dinner, and then you maybe went out for a couple more hours. But I started to just see what was around me, and I kind of started to respond to that stuff. Now me being 12, 13 years old, a little bit later on, I did get myself into a pretty bad situation in the neighborhood, and it had to do with a robbery. And there were very, very high up people involved, like Joe Watts, Fat Dom Borghese, and a lot of other people that needed to actually get involved in that whole situation to make things right and kind of make amends. But as I was saying, that is definitely a story I'm going to cover in detail later, where like I told you in some conversations, it was a very tough situation. I got kidnapped. There were guys from the Colombos that had to be involved. There was already people involved with the Gambinos. The guy was a very high associate in the family. So that was some stuff where I really got myself into a world of crap. And
Hmm.
it's something I regret. A lot of the things that I talk about, even on my channel, sometimes you say to yourself, well, wow, how did you do this, or how did you do that? And again, I was definitely in a little bit of trouble as a kid with some direction. My dad, right around that age at 13, did get cancer. He was sick, and unfortunately later on passed. Really, only about a year down the road, when I was 14. My Uncle Joe died prior to that, a couple years earlier, and we found out that he was killed. I didn't find that out till a little bit later from my brother. That was kind of not mentioned too much, but my father freaked out when it happened, and then my brother explained to me what really happened. And within those couple of years of losing my uncle and my dad getting sick with cancer, and he was the breadwinner, my dad. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, did everything she could for us, and we lived in a middle class house with a pool in the yard. I didn't come from a very lower class. My parents tried to give me everything we could, but everything they could, excuse me. But we just, I got kind of caught up in, like I said, looking up to these guys, and kind of being a product of my own environment, which a lot of people are in Staten Island. That's kind of where things begin to take a couple different turns, and
Yep.
I got myself in a little bit of trouble even after that, where I was placed on probation. I end up moving to Florida later on in life. Like I said, I'll even start to transition into some of that story later on as I get further off into my channel.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so, one thing I wanted the viewers to understand on that is, so you're 13 years old. You're very so how tall were you? You were very small at 13, right?
I was 6'6", James. I shrunk. Now I'm down to like 5'4". No,
Okay.
I'm just teasing you, man. I wasn't a very big guy. I was a skinny, smaller kid, very fast. We played a lot of sports. I talk about it in some of my videos, man. But I wasn't a really big guy. I'm a smaller guy, to be honest, James. But
Yeah.
I had a little bit of balls at that age, to
Yeah.
say it so pleasantly.
Yeah, and that'll be a a story, and I know the story, but you're going to reveal this on in your channel. But viewers, it's the thing is that I could tell you this, that you still suffer a lot of anxiety
Oh,
from
sure.
what happened, and to be honest, you got the shit beat out of you by a made person. That should not have happened. um, and so that you're lucky that you survived that. And I think the viewers, when you're ready to tell that story, they're going to be amazed at what happened. And so I'm sorry that you went through that, to be
Oh no,
honest.
James, I definitely appreciate that, and we had some talks over the past, like I said, week, and I
Yeah,
really appreciate it. I really can't say it enough. That I really appreciate you reaching out to me and even
sure.
giving me, like I said, this opportunity. And that stuff was super hard to kind of put some detail into it, though, and I explained that to you as well. What I was doing and what I did in the street was definitely not very good. And like I said,
Yeah,
I wasn't proud of it, but I was already running around. I was in fights. I was doing some fires, and I was doing some stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, stealing and doing things. I was already maybe robbing some cars by that
yeah,
age with other people. So I was doing things I wasn't supposed to do. And when this happened, because of the people it involved, and because I hung out with so many older kids in the neighborhood, not that I want to defend what happened, but it was, you could almost say, I was definitely asking for a big problem with what I did. And because the people were who they were, that made it 10 times worse. And a lot of people claimed that they thought I was a lot older because I did hang out with a lot of the older kids in the neighborhood. And since I was 9, 10 years old, I'm up and down the blocks and all over the neighborhood. And everybody kind of knew who I was in my neighborhood for sure. And that was, you know, again, I don't want to defend it. I feel like I spoke to you about, they should have gone a different route, and there were other people that were very upset about that parents should have been contacted no matter what in this situation, not some kid get kidnapped or dragged out and get a bad beating. I had a gun put to my face, and people may say, well, how could somebody do that? That's what some people were very capable of doing on Staten Island, very, back then. And when you messed with some of these guys, you could definitely expect some of those results. And yeah, I was lucky to kind of walk away, and my family knowing who they knew pretty much saved my life, to be honest.
yeah. No, that sounds good. And just as a tease, it involved about $80,000, worth of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yes, it did.
And so,
That was a lot of money back then, and the person that was involved, like I said, they were also known to hold on to money and things for people like Joe Watts, and
yeah,
like I said, Don Borghese was involved. So they were Fat Don Borghese, which he's obviously he's dead. If nobody knew that,
yeah,
so I dig him up again, and if I could, and
yeah,
but
yeah. No, that's just, but yeah, I want to show some photos. So I have 4 photos of you, you and your family. And so I wanted folks to see this, and maybe you could talk about each of these photos. Okay.
oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
That's
And that's the first
that
one.
that that handsome guy is me right about at the time I was 12 or 13. And if you couldn't tell by my double-breasted lavender suit there, James, that I was going for a certain look at that age already.
Yeah.
So that was me in Staten Island when I was 13. And again, I think I was going to a big party that night. It was I believe, yeah, a friend in the neighborhood. We kind of shared a confirmation party together. So I wanted to make sure I was in a suit and looking good that night.
And that's your house, right? That's your house
Yeah,
in
that was
Staten Island?
that was the basement that was the basement of my house. I lived on Echo Place, which is the Bull's Head westerly area of Staten Island, and I know I touched on some of it with you. With all
Yeah.
the guys in the neighborhood, you had TG Graziano, Sammy the Bull lived a couple blocks from us. Castellanos were up on Toad Hill. You had the Bilotis that were on Staten Island. And then there was about another 30 or 40 Joe Watts. You had another about 30 or 40 guys, literally, that were probably spread out all through Staten Island. So,
Yeah.
like I said, that time between Brooklyn and Staten Island, there really couldn't have been a place anywhere else on earth that probably had more gangsters, mobsters, and street guys in one area, to be honest.
Here's another photo I want to show.
Oh, that is my beautiful mom with the red hair.
Uh-huh.
That's my godmother Marie Ganone. That's
Mhm.
my godfather Johnny Boy Ganone, and them two, like I said, they uh, they controlled the local 400 union, James, which went all the way back to the 60s. My godmother with the cigarette, Marie Ganone, I miss her so much, and I miss my godfather very much.
Where is that photo at?
They were at, that was, I'm trying to think 100%. I got to get back to you. It might be, I want to say my cousin's wedding, my godmother's. I wasn't there. I was in Florida, and then they never wanted me to come back to New York too much. Anyway, when I left New York and ended up in Florida, we'll cover that later. But I ended up with an open warrant for a little stupid thing that I was actually on probation for, and I didn't go back to New York for a long time, to be honest. But I believe this was my godmother's daughter, my cousin Roseanne's wedding.
Oh, okay. Very good. And then here's another photo here, an older photo.
Oh wow, yeah. This James actually goes back to the Copacabana, and I
Uh-huh.
want to say I want to say that that's definitely 60s. The first gentleman in the photo, obviously closest to us, that's my Uncle Mike. Sitting across from him, that's my Aunt Connie. That's my father's sister. And then right
Yeah.
next to her is Lois Hubella. That was the Syrian's daughter,
Right.
my Aunt Lois. And I want to just say she's no longer here. She unfortunately passed uh, not too long ago, and
Oh, I'm
and
sorry
and
about that.
God rest her soul. Yeah, she lasted a long time, and to be
Mm.
honest, I know some of her family and other people. Like I explained to you, sometimes I get a little crap from people and stuff. I didn't touch on this yet, James, but I kind of also waited a long time to
Mm-hmm.
kind of jump into this space. I might have waited a little too long. Time will tell. But
Oh no.
I showed you the email from Michael Francis way back in 2020, and he
Yeah.
actually wanted to put me on the show, and I was very undecided at that point, and still very nervous to even come on and talk. I don't think
Yeah.
people realize sometimes how hard this can be, also. But
Right.
but that was my Aunt Lois, and sitting across from her with her hair up and in the white dress is my mother. And then on the end, next to my mother, is my father, John Romano, and across from him is my uncle Joe, which again, he was the one that married my Aunt Lois, and obviously was close with the Syrian Louis Hobella, and he
Yep.
knew some of them guys as well from back then.
Oh wow. That I love this photo. And then one
Oh,
more photo.
thank you,
Yeah,
James.
of course. And then one more photo. What's
That's
this?
that's my that's my mom and dad a little bit later on, and that's in my basement still on Echo Place. We had 3 floors. The basement was kind of done. If you can look at some of the old cabinets and the brown and some of the appliances, how old they kind of were, and that was probably that picture. I want to say was probably mid to late 80s. I want to say maybe like 88, 89, somewhere around there. But that was in my basement, and That's my parents, my mother and dad.
You're talking about how you had you lived down the street from Sammy Gravano. I know that Gravano had was originally in Brooklyn. Then he ended up moving to Staten Island, and so you knew the Gerard, right, and his
Uh,
daughter.
Gerard, I didn't know Karen really well, and again, some of them were a little bit older than me, like probably 8 to 10 years. I knew of Karen. I knew Karen dated Big Lee of the
Yeah,
Springville Boys, and Gerard used to hang out in the neighborhood at Pier 60, which was a schoolyard that was right around his house. And we had a couple different hangouts throughout the whole neighborhood. And he hung out with a lot of mutual people that we knew, and stuff like that. Just growing up in that area, you kind of knew everybody in the area. We've met a couple times, and I reached out to him a long time ago just to speak to him, and on Instagram and stuff like that. And he didn't remember too much. We went back and forth with a couple mutual friends, and then I spoke to somebody else. They said Nick, he sometimes don't remember any of that stuff. And like I said, I was a little younger than him, but he lived a few blocks away. Everybody knew who Gerard was. He hung out with all of the Springville boys and some other guys as well in the neighborhood. Justin that we knew, and he was very close with a lot of other people. I didn't hang out with him too much. I was just a little bit, like I said, a little bit younger.
so what was the so this was when he was when you were about 12, 13 years old is when Sammy flipped, and so we know about him going to he goes to basically he's in jail, prison a little bit, and then he ends up in Arizona. But then the family was there still in Staten Island for a while before they moved to
Yeah,
Arizona. So how were they treated? Were they ostracized? What were they? What was going on with the Gravanos? I know Sammy obviously wasn't there on Staten Island anymore, but I'm talking about the family. Was there any? Were people saying, "Hey, stay away from them"? Were they looked upon
I, I,
badly or what?
James, I would definitely say there were a lot of people that did remain. A couple people that they were obviously tight and close with. I think really, stuck by them, and they would probably agree to that. But a lot of other people, no. At that time, that was like a lot of people's. If you were a kid, like your favorite superhero, man, getting killed off in a show or something. Sammy was a no matter what people say, Sammy was a very big, obviously well known name in Staten Island, and you couldn't take that away. But when he did flip, yeah, I feel like it was the complete opposite. A lot of the guys in that life and that were street guys, but very much I think we're kind of turning a cold shoulder to them, and I don't I can't kind of speak for how they felt. I know in the neighborhood that no, it was definitely looked at like people were shocked too.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of people that I knew, obviously, and people talking in the neighborhood. Everybody always, people get together and hang out, different corners, different spots. Everybody was talking about it. Front page of the paper. Sammy flipped, and so I would imagine it was very very difficult for Karen and Gerard. But like I said, I can't speak for them in the neighborhood. There were some people that stuck by them, very close friends. I know that for 100% fact. Other people, no, definitely I gave them the cold shoulder while they were there. And then they moved out later on anyway. I guess
yeah,
once
they did.
they knew Sammy was getting out, then they eventually just came over to Arizona as well.
What about Lee? So Lee was actually one of the leaders of the New Springville Boys, and so was that looked upon bad? So he started dating Karen. He was actually with Karen several years, and my understanding is at some point he actually went to Arizona and was talking to Sammy Gravano about advice about the life and and so he knew that Sammy had flipped and all that, but was there any how did you know Lee, or what did people think about him dating Karen? Was there any blowback on that, or
To be honest, James, I don't know if he was 100%. I guess I don't know if he was 100% with us still, like right up until that time or not. And as
yeah,
far as him coming out to see Sammy, that was more of the first that I heard of it, unless that they were out here for maybe some other reason and did hook up with Sammy at some point. I don't know the exact time frame, so that's kind of their stuff, and stuff like that is kind of tough for me to
yeah,
elaborate on.
right,
I met Lee a couple times, and a very long time ago, and just really just by kind of shake hands, or the pizzeria that I worked at was with Big Billy and Franny and James and all of them guys. And some of those guys were in and out of there a lot later on in life. So I came across them, from time to time, and then had other friends in my neighborhood that maybe had some dealings with them and things like that. I began to gamble a little bit, and whatever trouble I might have been getting myself into, I would go see a loan shark here or a loan shark there already, kind of as a kid, and I was already gambling and stuff like that. So I knew of kind of all these guys, and again, what they were doing, and who they were. And as far as hanging out with a lot of those older guys, we were like a little bit of a crew underneath them guys. Like I told you, with some of the street gangs and all that stuff that went on from back then. If them guys got into fights, or in the mall or in the movie theaters, a lot of guys used to fight down at Midland Beach one on one. And I'm talking about 30, 40 guys in a circle. So there was a lot of stuff going on. But to go back to your question with Lee and Karen, I can't speak too much, to be honest, on their relationship and how it was as far
no,
as they go.
no, that's fine, and I was just curious about that. And so, one last item before we close so Jeff Nadeau did an interview with Peter Lavaglio the other day, and I know
Yes.
one of the very first shows that I saw of yours was maybe a month ago, and so you actually talked about the victim of Peter Lavaglio, a guy named last name's Forte, and so what did you think about Peter Lavaglio? Obviously, he didn't sound good. He's got cancer,
Yeah.
all that. But what we know from the news and from the different reports that this guy Peter was an acting capo of the Bonanno family, and he ends up getting into an altercation with this guy, and he smashes a glass in the guy's, basically
Yeah.
blinds the guy and all that. And so, what did you think about this guy Lavaglio? Do you think he's changed? Do you? And I know you have some firsthand knowledge of the victim. Your family does,
Yeah.
at least. And so,
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
you
Wait.
speak on some of that?
Yeah, yeah. The video that I seen, obviously, the man James is very ill, and he's got to kind of face his consequences and stuff that he did. As far as the story went, what he doesn't realize is that, yes, we were very close with the family, and I don't want to touch too much on them, but we were very close with them for almost as long as some of these other people going back to Brooklyn. I mean, 40, 50 years. So I got a phone call when I was in Florida about the whole situation. And when I was talking to my family, they said what happened, and they said the guy might be a captain. And we just started to, I know my brother and somebody else started to look into it a little bit. And when we found out what happened, the whole story, and then they were able to actually view the tape from the bar, and whatever fight broke out, he came back in with people that he was with, and he kind of suckered this guy from the side with a glass. And Peter was very well known to be out in bars and stuff like that. And he said it himself. I really don't know why he did the interview. He said he came on to maybe clear some stuff up. He didn't really touch on anything. I don't know if he was maybe looking for forgiveness or to try to that family would never forgive him. He had partial blinding in his eye, and I just feel like for guys to be out there, or especially a captain or you knew where the guy's bar was. You knew who he was. He wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't. This was another example of just a drunk guy in a bar that's supposed to be a captain, quote unquote captain with the uh, bananas, and he turns around and acts like a 13 or a 14-year old, and jumping a guy no less with a couple other guys that went back in. And like I said, that was just he had a bad rep like that. And those people, my family, seen the tape and things like that. So and then obviously things went very bad for him. He decided to become an informant, and yeah, I seen the video, and he sounds like he might be trying to say he's remorseful for everything he's done at this stage. I guess sometimes that may happen at the end of life as well. But no, he messed up with that guy very bad. And as I said in one of my other videos, if people want to check out the last one I did in the response to Jeff Nadeau, he might have had a very bigger problem on his hands, like I said, going back a long time ago, because they were very friendly with mutual friends as well. And if my uncle being around, my father being around, other people, other people that they might have went a different route. That's all I'll say about that.
So, one thing that he mentioned, talking about Lavaglio, he's trying to say that the guy, the one that he hit with the glass, he tried to say that he did it because the guy said, "Well, I know where you live," or something.
Yeah,
Did that
yeah.
really happen or not?
No, I'll be honest, James. When you look at some of that stuff or some of the stuff that I know they seen, there was no, you didn't have no audio, or they just had like I guess like a CCTV camera just up in the, so you couldn't hear what was said. I don't personally. I'll say 100% because I want to come on and be honest about everything. I don't know if he threatened or said anything like that. What I do know from what I heard was that there were a lot of people whispering into to Freddie's ear, and whoever else, his stepson or whoever else was there at the bar, people kept telling Freddie, "Oh, you don't know who this guy is, and this guy's made guy, and this guy's this." He said, "I don't give a fuck who he is." He said, he was more worried about his place and the bar. They got into a fight. He said, "I don't care who he is." So I'm sure words went back and forth, and they felt very disrespected. But the way that they handled it, just to me, goes to show you too that he didn't do the right thing, and he paid the consequences for it. The other guy had to deal with something for the rest of his life. So I don't know. Everybody else could kind of make the call there.
You're right. And so, one last question about this. I know one of the people that he testified against, and this is, you brought it up on your video, is the guy John Porky Zancolcio, I believe. If I
Yeah,
pronounced it
yeah,
right.
yeah. I believe, and again, I want to say that case ended up where he ended up beating the case.
He did. He did. Porky
Peter,
did.
Peter had a lot of very, I guess, iffy things that he was talking about, and I think his
Right.
credibility started to go out the window a little bit when some of these things he was talking about, or maybe he was leaving things out, and him being a drug dealer and having all this bad rep and all these different stories. I mean, he said something about a different thing, that why he was called. I would think they call him PD bullshits. They were calling him Petey Bullshits because he was bullshitting all the time about everything. That's why we're running his mouth in a bar. So
Yeah.
that's That's what I think about that, and hopefully, thank God, all those other guys did beat the case and walk away from what this guy was trying to, to do.
Yeah, no, no, I appreciate it. And so, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for coming on with me. And anything that you'd like to say before we close the
I,
interview?
I just want to say again, James, thank you very much. I hope all your viewers, I have a very big respect for what you do in this game. And I know I've only been doing mine for like 5 weeks, but I've been watching all you guys for a very long time. And I believe you're a guy that does his research. You like to put on people that tell the truth. So I just want to really thank you and express my gratitude for kind of letting me even come on your show and be a part of it. And I hope we could do something maybe later in the future as I get a little bit more comfortable. I'd love to have you on and maybe cut up some other stuff sometime.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And so, everyone, please check out, the Nick Romano show. Like I said, I'll have all the links there where you can reach out. We're trying to get him to over 1,000. He's done well. You've done well. About 600 subs in just a
Yeah, you
couple of
know
weeks.
what? I want to cover that just before you go, James,
Yeah.
because I'm literally going on. I'm doing everything myself, man. I'm learning as I go, and this is a big new experience for me too. So there'll be some funny stuff along the way, and I'm sure I'll have some hiccups. My quality and videos and stuff are nowhere near you guys and what you guys are up to, but I'm hoping I get there later on, James. And I know you said you'd be willing to help me with a lot of stuff too.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, we're trying to get you to 1,000 subs. You're almost there. So,
There you go.
yeah, we want you to get monetized. Get a little bit of change for all the hard
I'd love
work.
a little bit. We love cash, James. Cash is good. So if we get to the point where we can make some cash, that sounds great to me, pal. But until
Yeah.
then, I enjoy also coming on, and it gives me a chance to share a little bit of my background and maybe give me an opportunity, like I said, to hang around in this game for a little while, because you guys are all a little nuts. I definitely see that.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I appreciate your time coming on. And I definitely look forward to coming on your show. And
Ah,
we'll
great.
definitely do this again. Okay.
Thank you so much, James. It was really my pleasure, and I want to say goodbye to all your subscribers. I hope you guys all enjoy your weekend.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, James, have a good one.